So now we'll go ahead and start the program, inshallah. I'll pass it on to Imam Dawud. Here you go.
Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله القائل لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. والحمد لله القائل إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وأسوتنا محمد المصطفى وعلى آله الأصفياء وأصحابه الأتقياء والتابعين لهم بخير وإحسان إلى يوم الجزاء. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our life. We thank Him for giving us the most excellent example for humankind in Al-Habib al-Mustafa Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, and we seek the most excellent prayers and the most perfect peace upon our Master, our beloved, and our personal example for conduct, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi rashidin wa sallam, and upon his righteous family members, his rightly guided, pious companions, and all who follow them in goodness and excellence into the day of reward and punishment for what follows. Beloved brothers and sisters, what I'm going to do is just give a very brief presentation or introduction into a book that I wrote that came out around 3 months ago or so. It's called Futuwa and Raising Males into Sacred Manhood. Futuwa and Raising Males into Sacred Manhood. Inshallah, we will define this term Futuwa for you. There's a term that we know that was used by Salaf al-Salih of the early generations, and scholars such as Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah mentioned and wrote in his writings such as Madarij al-Salikin, and other scholars wrote about this issue of Futuwa, and especially how it relates to our masculinity in a healthy way. So, in the beginning, why write this book to begin with? And I want to add on a couple of other points. I think a number of us, as Muslims, have seen that certain positive masculine traits amongst males have been on the decline in recent years. In other words, they don't make men the way they used to, right? And this is not just an observation that's been only made by Muslims, but it's been made by people who are Christians, Mormons, Orthodox Jewish people, Sikhs, and other people of conscience that have recognized in the age of modernity, and what now some call postmodernity, that basically something about healthy masculinity, something that men have always displayed throughout space and time, irrespective of religion, irrespective of civilization, irrespective of geography, from 2,000 years ago to 1,000 years ago to 300 years ago, that something now has changed in masculinity. So I referenced one book here by a sociologist, very famous, Dr. Leonard Sachs, who wrote a book called Boys Adrift. There's another book called Calling of the American Mind. And you can look up these books. They're online. But there to dress ourselves with good traits that manifest, we have to empty out bad traits before we put in good traits that then can manifest, right? For example, just very briefly, let's give you a brief example. Some of you are eating, so please park well. Maybe I'll save that for later since some of you are eating. No, I'll save it. Let's say someone is dying of thirst. They're like suffering major dehydration. And you have some clean water. And you give them some clean water, but the cup that you give it to them in was used to dispose of, let's say, sewage. And it wasn't clean. And you give them that water and they drink a tall glass of water. That person's already suffering from dehydration. That water might make them sick, and if there's enough toxins in it, it actually might kill them. Right? So we have to empty out the bad, we have to look at and point out what's wrong to get rid of it, and then fill up with good. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam said in hadith sahih, that for every disease, there is a cure. Right? For every da, there's a dawa. Right? For every disease, there's a cure. And many times as instituting the opposite of what brought about the problem. So one issue is what's called, what we will call radical feminism, and the gender confusion movements have confused things about what it means to be a person to begin with, much less a man or a woman, right? That there are people who even say they have no gender. This is called non-gender conforming or non-binary, to the extent that an unflag can wake up tomorrow and say she's a dhaka, and then the next day a dhaka can wake up and say that he's a unflag, to that extent. And we've been living, and our kids have been raised in a language environment, and even in Disney movies and shows, cartoons have groomed a generation of young people to be confused about what it even means to be a male, much less grow up to be a man. This is a problem. Right? Also, in regards to this issue, certain roles that were traditionally male roles and female roles have shifted in what we could say in modern Western societies. Right? Some of these things have totally shifted. Now we have the phenomenon of people say, well, they can be a house husband. Right, for instance. This has been unheard of in the time of Sahaba. It had been unheard of in America 50 years ago. Now you have people say they're house husbands. Mr. Mom was a movie made about it, other TV shows, right? Things like this. Muslim community, and I've had many mothers have come to me who are single mothers, wanting help and support in raising their boys to be men. As it says, it takes a village to raise a boy to be a man. But it's even harder for a single mother, right? Single mothers need extra support because no matter how hard a sister tries to raise a boy to be a man, a sister can never understand how it is to be a man in this world. Never. La yumkin. All men are males. But all men are males, right? But all males are not men, right? All men are males, but all males are not men. Physically and metaphysically. So according to be a man, one must be mukallaf according to Sharia, right? But we're talking about something even deeper, the inside of what makes a person be a man, because a but not be a rajul haqiqi, not be a real man. Right? Inna li kulli shay'in haqiqa. من أقوال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم رواه الطبراني رحمه الله تعالى. Because for every created thing, there's a deeper metaphysical reality, the Prophet said. It's a deeper truth. Anything you see on the surface is a deeper truth. There's like this a dhahir and a batin. It's a deeper truth, a deeper reality, right? And then we have the issue of parents, and especially the sisters, saying, where are the brothers at? Where are the brothers at? I have a 15-year-old daughter. I'm concerned about her future prospects in 5 years, about who she's going to marry. Because I look around and see the state of the brothers. I'm worried about my own daughter, right? I'm worried about your daughters. I'm worried about your daughters, right? So we have to do something to work on this issue. And then also we have the issue of the weak, soft, apologetic brothers, right? Who don't have the moral courage or the ghairah for the deen of Islam, who will be willing to compromise anything and everything almost to be accepted by the dominant culture. This is a problem too. You see some people in Dearborn doing this right now, defending the undefensible in regards to the book issue. You literally have some Muslims defending books that have sexually explicit pictures and language, right? This should never be the position of Muslims say, well, what will Fulan bin Fulan, what these people think about us? So what? So there's a position of a real man. A real man's on the truth. They're not trying to defend, they're not trying to offend anyone, but a real man takes the position like of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahmatullahi alayhi, when he said, if you don't speak the truth and I don't speak the truth, how will the people know the difference between what is correct, a sahih, and what is saqim, what is sick? That's what Imam Ahmad said, rahmatullahi alayhi, when his mihna, was called Inquisition. When the Abbasiyin had Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahmatullahi alayhi in prison. Imam Ahmad was a real man, rahmatullahi alayhi. You see? So this is a problem. So we have the term al-futuwa. This is the beginning part of the book, al-futuwa. What is al-futuwa? It's loosely translated as sacred chivalry, some say spiritual chivalry, Islamic chivalry, manly chivalry. It is a word that is not mentioned in the Quran, but there are words that are similar linguistically to it in the Quran. There are hadith or prophetic sayings that are called marasil, or what we would say don't have proper asanid or chains of narrations that mention this word, but we know that people amongst the Salaf, like Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, and other people, Ma'ruf al-Qaraqi, people use these terms, and al-Dhahabi and Ibn al-Qayyim and other scholars mention this term and attribute these, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, they attribute these terms. So we know this is a term that was understood in early Islamic history. It was a concept that was manifested, right? And this is the thing too. In the time of the righteous Salaf, they had certain realities that manifested without words. Today we have a lot of words to define things that we don't manifest. Understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's a code of honor. It relates to the word fatah, right? Or a group of the fatah is another fityan. And this word puts us in the mindset of a young boy who is transitioning from one stage of childishness into a greater stage of development and maturity. This is what the Fityan are. They are a group of young men who are coming out of the stage of being more childlike and being all about sport and play into an age of more maturity and discipline. And Fatwa, in fact, is what we would call also a code of honor. See, we Muslims, we believe in honor. We are a people who believe in honor. We are not a people who don't believe in things such as modesty and shame. And in society today, they say if you have shame, that's a bad thing. Get rid of all shame. Right? Even some mental health professionals will talk about this. That shame is bad. The Prophet ﷺ said that if you don't have any shame, then you'll do whatever you want to do. You have to have shame. You have to have a sense of honor. Right? And we know that literally Europeans copied the code of Fatwa and the code of honor and chivalry, or the fatah, the honorific knight. They literally borrowed this after the Byzantines and the Crusaders came across Muslims and came across the likes of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. They literally borrowed this concept because they saw the chivalrous knights amongst the Muslims. At-Tustari al-Hamdani rahmatullahi ta'ala, he said that al-Fatwa and its wholeness means following the Sunnah and its completion. Because sacred manhood, the manifestation of sacred manhood is al-Habib al-Mustafa Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And of course, he is the example for all humankind, males and females. However, in his kamal, in his perfection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifested the most perfect human being, the best of creation, in the form of a man. Like no matter how hard a woman wants to be, a woman can never be a husband. The Prophet ﷺ perfected and showed and demonstrated how to be a husband. A woman can't be a husband. He ﷺ was a father. A woman can't be a father. A woman's a mother. She can't be a father. There's certain things under Sharia that are not incumbent upon women. Like al-jihad fi sabilillah is not incumbent upon the woman. We know some sahabiyat went on ghazwa, like Fatima Zahra and Nusayba and Ayman. They weren't on the very front lines with the swords, they were in the back. That wasn't incumbent upon them according to the Sharia. You see, there are certain things that the Prophet ﷺ manifested in his kamal in the form of a man, as it is demonstrated by the Sharia, and that's no slight against women. We're saying that women are lesser than men. It's just the mizan that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave certain fada'il to women over men, and men have certain fada'il over women. And this is how the balance is set as we see the manifestation of the Jamali and Jalali traits in creation in society. Paradise lies at the feet of mothers, doesn't lie at the feet of fathers. Your mother, then your father. Right? There's a social, sisters who are single, if a man ever comes to you and asks you that you need to pay him a mahar, you run away as fast as you can. You put on your Nikes and you sprint away from him. That should never happen. Right? There's nothing relating to the sacred law. So he's a complete example of what it means to be a man. Allahumma salli wa sallam wa barak alayhi wa ala alihi. Raising up males into sacred manhood. Traditionally, in Islamic societies, when you read Islamic history, especially when the Fatwa guilds were systematized, during the time of the Abbasid, it was carried on by the Seljuks, in the Uthmaniyya, or the Ottomans, who was in Yemen. We had in the areas like in the Hausa land of Khilafah, Sheikh Uthman bin Fudi, and Sultan Muhammad Bello, and etc. Many of the non-West Africans don't know there actually was a Khilafah in West Africa with a black man named Amir al-Mu'mineen. That's one of the lectures, though. We can talk about that later. Or maybe Sheikh Ishaq can talk about that, inshallah. Yeah, there was a black Amir al-Mu'mineen. There was a step or process of how Muslims of old systematized and raised up boys to be young men. So there's certain upbringing or tarbiyah for males that would start in the home. Now, many of you say, well, what if there is no man in the house? This is a reality. Sometimes women, their husband's divorced, they're a widow, their husband passed away, or the husband is working 2 or 3 jobs and he's chasing after the dunya so much he didn't spend any time with his sons. This is also a reality that we have. Okay? Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected al-Habib al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and He reared him up through his divine guidance, his divine protection. We know that Habibullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he never worshipped idols. He never drank alcohol. He never gambled. He was never involved in fawahish. We know that before Quran was revealed, right? Yet he was born an orphan. His father Abdullah died before he was born. But he had always male role models and male mentorship, even though his father died before he was born. So the first person to look after him as a male was his grandfather Abdul Muttalib. That was the first. Okay? Then his mother Amina bint Wahab passed away. Abdul Muttalib passed away. Then who helped look after him? It was his uncle Abu Talib. And Abdul Muttalib was a Sayyid amongst Quraysh. Abu Talib was a very respected man in the society of Quraysh in Mecca. So even him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had males to come step in and to protect him. Even Abu Talib protected him, even Islam, until the year of grief. Right? So we have this foundation. The first thing that we do with young males is that we don't teach things that are overly theoretical or philosophical to young males, especially below the age of 7. They don't cognitively understand it. We have this concept of teaching adab before ilm. We teach adab before sacred knowledge. So this is the time in which proper comportment and adab is taught, and much of this is through the embodiment of the role models around, of course, women, but males and men, in which the young males are supposed to learn adab. SubhanAllah, we have a crisis of adab in our community. We have a crisis of adab. In time of the Sahaba, a youth would not walk in front of their elder, except with permission. Imam Bukhari mentioned this in Al-Adab al-Mufrad. There's a narration of Abu Hurairah where he chides a young man for walking in front of his father without permission. It's just one small thing, right? So this is the first step. Once the young people get over the age of 7, then other things can be taught to them. Still nothing orally intellectual, but one of the first things that we do is we teach our children, and children love stories, and they love things that are descriptive. And the first thing we do is we teach them to love and fall in love with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is why traditionally, many times with the young people, it starts off with teaching al-Shamal al-Muhammadiyya by Imam al-Tirmidhi, rahmatullahi ta'ala. How did he look? How did he walk? How did he talk? He faced people squarely when he spoke to them. He gave them their undivided attention. He didn't cut people off when they were talking. He would be patient, let them talk, and then he would respond. age are things that are taught. And this is part of the refinement that then people have teachers. They have teachers outside the household where they're put into a group. And part of the spiritual training and spiritual transmission is done. I saw this, by the way. I've been in the land of Mali twice. Actually, I had a chance to visit this and see this. So in southern Mali, close to the border of a country called Burkina Faso, there's an area they call the land of Dogon tribe, right? It's half Muslim, half Mushrik. Or maybe there's more Muslims than Mushrikeen. They still have some Mushrikeen in their tribe. I went to an area, and once the young men get to a certain age, and they all have like a certain, in the village, they have like a murshid or a guide. A murabbi is another word we can use, that helps raise them up. And they teach them things, and they sit every day with this murabbi to learn things. Then they go away at a certain age for certain rites of passage. And once they pass these rites of passage, they come back and they are recognized in the community as being men. And then they're treated like men. They don't call them the boys. And we adjust our language too. Your 14-year-old sons aren't the boys. They are young men. And you address them like men, and maybe they'll rise to the occasion to act like men. You keep calling them boys and counting them, they're going to act like boys. And then you're raising him to be some other woman's problem later on, if he gets married. Right? We call this in African American culture mama's boys. No mama's boys. So this is part of refinement. In Surah Al-Kahf, before the story of Dhul Qarnayn, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam. And he asked an older man to be his guide, his teacher. We know him as Al-Khadr alayhi salam, right? So I always say this: since a prophet of God, one of Ulul Azm al-Rusul, one of the strong, determined messengers of God, the prophet who is mentioned most by name in the Quran, sought a spiritual guide or spiritual mentor when he was young, a young man. What does it look like that we think that we don't need to put our young males under some discipline, rigor, and male mentorship and guidance from a man? Doesn't make sense. Even the Prophet ﷺ had a teacher, that's Jibreel alayhi salam. Even though we believe that Prophet Muhammad's maqam is higher than the maqam of Jibreel, nonetheless, Jibreel was his teacher. And we learned this in Hadith Jibreel. When the Prophet came to ﷺ at Bab Jibreel at El-Masjid Nabawi. Isn't that right? And they sat down and said they were even sitting so close that their legs were touching. Reinforcement through the group, rites of passage. This also includes what we would call sunnah activities. Young men need to get off energy and also have constructive physical activities to help channel their testosterone and help give them discipline. If you ever notice young males and young females at a certain age, young men or young males grapple and wrestle. You don't see the young girls grappling and wrestling and fighting like how young men do. Right? The girls and boys are metaphysically different. Even biologically speaking, the higher levels of testosterone drive them to act a certain way and don't sit as still at a certain age than the girls. This is a problem of how we have education in America in grade school, that we expect young boys to sit still the same way girls do, and when they don't, they try to diagnose them as ADD and put them on medicine. The girls and boys aren't going to act the same way developmentally at the same age. Everyone knows that girls socially mature quicker than boys. Everyone knows that. All societies have recognized that. So there's the sunnah activities. The Prophet ﷺ did grappling and wrestling the Sahaba did. And we have martial arts today. Jalaluddin al-Suyuti compiled a book of hadith just about prophetic grappling. We have the hadith of him, sallallahu the Sahaba, grappling and wrestling. He encouraged archery, swimming, equestrianism, something called horseback riding. These are activities, organized activities that are very important to get the youth in. And I missed one reason. The primary reason is because there's barakah in it. Because anything the Prophet ﷺ encouraged the Sahaba to do, to teach their boys, they know that there's a metaphysical and spiritual benefit behind it. There's a metaphysical and spiritual benefit. We're not a people of el-Madiyah. Everything just isn't materialistic. Everything just isn't by empirical observation. We believe in spiritual and unseen dimensions to things. Right? We're spiritual people. We're not like Marxists. We're not like the woke. We believe in spiritual realities. Right? And then also organized khidmah, or community service, for one's parents, for one's teachers, and community service. All these things that I mentioned were systematized under the Sultan al-Nasir Din al-Abbasi. This was all systematized in the Fatuwa Guild. He systematized at the time when, just before this, Al-Quds had been taken over by the Crusaders. He systematized the Fatuwa Guilds, where adab was learned, sacred knowledge of Farm was learned, that young men learned how to defend themselves, became physically fit, and they even used to do service like neighborhood watch in Baghdad to make sure the streets were safe at night. These young men went through the Fatuwa Guilds. When they became grown, when they became older, these were the same young men that then went with Salahuddin and took back Al-Quds. One generation. One generation. So there's many virtues that the scholars of Fatuwa have written about. Of the foremost of those, and I was taught this by our teacher, Sheikh Ali Sulaiman Ali, who's the resident alim at MCWS. He said that of all noble traits of character, the foundation is as-sidq. As-sidq is the foundation of all noble traits of character. It is translated as truth or truthfulness. But sidq, when it relates to the heart, also relates to purity and sincerity. It relates to ikhlas and also a tahara, or a tahara fil qalb. Right? This is what as-sidq. And we know this from authentic hadith, right? And we have it listed there. In the sidq yahdi al-bir, and the bir yahdi al-jannah. So, truthfulness leads towards al-bir. Bir, which some English translators say is piety. This word in Arabic is called kalima jamia. It's a comprehensive word that encompasses a lot of meaning. We can basically say that truthfulness is the foundation of all noble traits of character. And then noble traits of character leads to paradise. Whereas lack of character or immoral character will take one to hellfire. Right? It's the opposite. So as sidq, truthfulness is the foundation. This is something that has to be taught firstly through embodiment and through words. It should never be an issue with our young people that we tell them it's okay to tell white lies, or we use unnecessary deception in front of them. This is bad. Right? This is bad. And this causes a lot of people to doubt religion. I literally have people tell me this, right? That taught as kids to believe that Santa Claus was coming down the chimney and bringing them gifts. And they found that that's a lie. That gets them to start doubting and believing what their parents say and doubting religion. To doubt Christianity itself. I'll tell you a quick story. This is how my father stopped believing in Christmas and then stopped eating pork when he came into the Nation of Islam with the Nation of Islam brothers back in the late 1950s. So my father lived in the west side of Detroit. This is the problem with lies. But subhanAllah, it got him out of Christianity. Okay? They used to have a Christmas tree. Across the street from him were two families from Nation of Islam. So my dad, being an innocent young kid, he asked him, "What are you hoping for Christmas? What's Santa Claus going to bring you?" That's my dad asked as a boy. The Nation of Islam boys told him, "There's no Santa Claus. Your mama's buying you those presents. Ain't no white man come bring those presents." He said, "Besides, you don't even have a chimney. Because Santa Claus wants to come down the chimney at the middle of the night and come to the Christmas tree, and they make him like Allah. He knows when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake, he knows if you've been naughty or nice. That means he knows everything if he knows whether you're naughty or nice." Right? So then my dad went back to my grandmother and said, "Oh, they told me there's no Santa Claus, and you buy me those presents." And that started. Then they told him not to eat pork, then he stopped eating pork. But you see what I'm saying? Like, he started doubting that religion because of a lie. Right? So we can't embody nor purposely tell even so-called white lies. We should never do that in front of our children in general and our boys in particular. As-sidqiyya. This is the first stage, as-sidqiyya. Truthfulness of intention. We have to embody this. If we're going to do what we say we're going to do, we should have the intention and try to do it. And our children watch us very carefully to see our consistency, or they can see inconsistency. Right? They can see it. Truthfulness in speech, sidqul qawl. Then Abu Bakr Siddiq, in his inaugural khutbah, he said, "As-sidqu amana wa kadhibu khiyana." Truthfulness is amana. So we are also to be truthful in our actions, which includes our amana, our trusts. And we have to stress this to our boys and show them. And then he said, and lying is khiyana, is treachery. Sidq in qawl, by the way, is not just feeling like we're saying something that's truthful because we think it's true. No, we have to verify what we are saying is truthful. Right? And not just saying that you think what you're saying, "Oh, I believe it was true." No, we have to verify that it's truthful. Otherwise, we don't spread things that are false. This is part of the sidq. And this is the foundation of noble traits of character. And this is the building blocks of the other virtues that come to sacred manhood. And there are more such as shaja'ah, moral courage. Men and women both need to be courageous, but how that shows up in our society looks different sometimes for men than for women. Right? I'll give you another example. This is embarrassing. Something in our community in southeastern Michigan, I get contacted by a sister in our community who says, I don't think I can stay married to my husband anymore. Lynch. Because they hear a bump in the noise in the middle of the night. The wife and the husband. And the husband says to the wife, Did you hear that? And she said, yeah. And the husband tells the wife, "You want to go downstairs and check that out?" It's a real story, right in our community. Because manhood is more about the nafaqah. You can have 6-figure salary, make $250,000 a year, live buy a big house. There's more to manhood than materialism. Just because you get a medical degree and you can make $250,000 a year and live in a big house and give your wife money, that's not what it means to really be a man. Let me remind you, the Prophet worked for Sayyidah Khadija, and then she sent the marriage proposal to him. But we say he's the best of men. Isn't that right? Who would deny that he's the best of men? And a Muslim, whoever says he's the best of men, anyone who's a Muslim that says he's not the best of men has made a statement of disbelief. So he's the best of men. So we have to be amongst the truthful. And I will conclude with this before taking any questions and answers. I'll conclude with this. This is an opportunity for some of your young males, or you fathers with your sons. There are some seats left. I am leading an Umrah group through Imam Ghazali Institute, December 22nd to December 31st. Women can come as well. Families can come. However, there are going to be certain rules and certain side gatherings. There are going to be males only. The sisters can't go through. There'll be a guide for sisters to help sisters. So there'll be general lectures for women and men. But there'll be time for one-on-one mentorship. We're going to Medina first, inshallah. Then we'll change into our ihram, going to Mecca. We'll do our Umrah rites, of course, in Medina. Of course, the Masjid Nabawi, visit Shuhada, Uhud. You know, go to Mekan, Ghazwa al-Khandaq. We'll go to some of the historical places. Masjid Quba. Right? This is for the men and for the women. You see? But there will be some specific things just talking about men, because just as women need to have certain times to be in women-only spaces, we have to have times to have certain sensitive conversations just with the young males in which women folk are around, so that we can speak very freely and clearly about certain things. Right? So the website is right there. We have a number of people who signed up from our community. There's some people in the audience who I know that have been signed up and will be going with us. With that, I close and avail myself for any questions before Salat al-Maghrib, Salat al-Isha. We also have a book. You can purchase a book afterwards. It's $25. You can purchase it from me today, either through Zelle or PayPal. I can give you my account, or if you have cash. And you can also go to Imam Ghazali, imamghazali.com, and you can purchase the book from imamghazali.com. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Any questions or comments? What's the minimum age for this? Okay, so young males can go and be escorted with their fathers if they're below the age of 17. But if you want to send them, your young males, they have to be 17 up to be able to travel without parents, to fly. So that's it. Unfortunately, how the rules are now, I can't take anyone that's like 13 or 14 years old. So that's the age situation.
Assalamu alaikum. So if anyone has any questions, inshallah, you can go ahead and ask. I will repeat it for Imam Dawud, Walid, and then we'll go from there while he answers them, inshallah.
So, the sitting themselves and like are going to include like horseback and archery or not?
Said gun skills, to shooting guns,
and driving motorcycle cars.
and going motorcycle cars as it relate. It's a type of rite of passage, but it's not exactly the same. So as I mentioned, whatever Habibullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam specifically through words instructed the Sahaba to teach their sons, they know there's a better in it. Right? There's a better in it. So it's more than just about self-defense. But honestly speaking, I've been trained to use firearms. I've never taken any of my sons and taught them how to shoot a gun, but they have shot bow and arrow and shot archery. They know how to drive, right? But they also go on horseback riding, right? So I think that there's a barakah in that. By the way, some of us, and this is led by Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya, during hunting season, before it's gun hunting season, he's taken a number of the young men for deer hunting, but using the bow and arrow, the archery. And it's not for sport. Right, they actually go, and then whatever that is killed, you show them the proper way of dealing it. Then we bring the deer back, and in the halakha afterwards, the young males eat from the venison, the deer meat, in stew or barbecue sandwiches. And there's a sense of pride, healthy pride, that a young man gets when he goes out and says, I went hunting, or I'm the one who got that deer. That's like the saying, like, bring home the bacon. You know that saying, right? There's something very, there's something empowering about that, right? So I'm all in favor of the archery in particular, and to go out with people who know how to hunt before gun season, right? And in these times, and do things like deer hunting, I think is very noble. And there's also fishing trips that the youth are taking on during the summertime as well. And these are good bonding activities to have the young males get together and go out camping and fish, and then actually, eat what they call.
Sister, go ahead. So I think,
Yeah. Basically, about is there anything in there for women, and when women are forced to roll up qawama, and how to advise women or the demo with that. How to help for women? How to help? Okay, are there direct instructions for that spelled out at XYZ? No. They are not in there. And see, when I wrote this book, part of this book is kind of like a guide, but it's not a one-stop shop. Because the reality of it is that there has to be discussions that men have with young males to talk with them about these issues, and there's a level of embodiment, right? So, as one of my teachers said, this tradition of ours, of Fatua, is not transmitted from Matun to Matun. It's a Sudur to Sudur. It's from the living, breathing chest of men who transmit this to the living, breathing hearts of young males. This is how this is transmitted. But the framework behind how the scholars wrote about this is that if they work on these madarij and raise up in virtues, once the young males work on striving to perfect these virtues, they will already be at that step and will naturally be الرجال قوامون على النساء, right? But it's based in first striving to perfect and work on these virtues. Because saying these things about qawama, but not working on the internal work to try to master the virtues, then the outward won't manifest in the proper way. If that makes any sense. Walid salam, Sheikh.
You mentioned that in your book, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, mentorship, according to when in Arab tradition they used to send their kids to someone to raise for them.
Yes.
As they send the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Halim to Saudi, so they can learn a lot of things, how to be a man. You mentioned that in your book?
Yes, so the Sheikh mentioned that about the mentorship and actually sending the young males away, just as how the Arabs of old and other traditions. If you ever have read the book or even seen the TV movie called Roots, about the story of Kunta Kinte in the Gambia and how he got captured and put into slavery, you see the young males were taken with their guides and they were taken away to learn man things away from the village. And this is something that is in the book. We talk about mentorship and encouraging activities where young males can get away from the comfort of their homes, and particularly from the coddling of their mothers. And to get away in an environment, because in order to be a man, one has to be able to do a level of toughness and rigor. A level of toughness and rigor. And it's best to do this getting into nature and getting out of the comforts of modernity. Right? And so this is mentioned here, and again I allude to this about the camp that we've had nothing but having the young males going out. The Boy Scouts used to do something similar like this. The problem with the Boy Scouts is they're called the Scouts. Because due to a lawsuit of the woke agenda, the Boy Scouts allowing girls, they allowing trans boys, so it's no longer, they don't even call it the Boy Scouts anymore, just the Scouts. So those sorts of settings aren't proper for our sons, but even with the Boy Scouts, they don't get the Islamic tarbiyah, right, in the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts used to be Christian-based, now it's just called the Scouts. But yes, this point is mentioned in the book. So,
on the previous slide, you mentioned the truthfulness of our actions and intentions, so how do we identify? So you said we have to be able to, before we speak, we must verify that we're saying the truth. How can we identify that we're actually saying the truth? How do we fix that?
okay, so the brother asked about part of simple qawl is verifying the truth, right? We even have the word like tasdeeq in Arabic, right? That you affirm something that is the truth. And we do this with our faith, right? It's part of our calendar, right? How do we do it? Well, Surah Hujurat, for instance, mentions this, right? That when a facet comes with you for news, and it's a general principle, then you strive to verify it, right? So the baseline is if you are told some information and you are unclear about it, the baseline is sukut. Be quiet. Prophet ﷺ said, speak a good word or be quiet. So we've been allured in the 21st century with everything having instant access and phones and WhatsApp groups and Facebook. That we have to get something and we need to like it immediately. Then it shows in our timeline. We have to share it. Someone can forward us the most wild conspiracy theory in a video on WhatsApp, and then we forward it to another group, or forward it to our families. Right? This is actually un-Islamic. It's actually un-Islamic. And we fall into this type of sin regularly because of ghafla. right? Because we're heedless, right? So part of this and being truthful is understanding our responsibility to verify. And if we are unable to verify, the baseline is that's the baseline. Without harm. And then?
Yeah, inshallah, Adhan will be at 8:25, so I believe we have time for one more question. So we can leave some time for the book signing as well. So if anyone has a question. Otherwise, I have one actually on Dawud. Okay, inshallah, this will be the last question. So, for a young man who finds himself caught up in this world, making a lot of mistakes, he wasn't necessarily raised in an environment of sacred manhood. Then he was to recognize the correct path he should go down. What sort of tips or advice would you give this young man? Because I know many of our youth and many of our families are struggling with this type of situation.
So the hadith that says inevitable tawbah. Tawbah is always the first step. When we realize that we have any deficiencies, and tawbah is more than just about actively committing sin that we need tawbah for. That we need to all be making tawbah and turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when we know we haven't done our best and we can do better, that we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recognizing our weakness and asking Him that we need to do, or asking Him to guide us and empower us to do better, because we fell short. And this is the first step on the spiritual path, as some of the Arafin says in Tawbah. This is the first step, right? So we have remorse. And then part of self-rectification is going to those individuals and being humble, having tawadu, which is a principle of Fatullah. Humility to ask for help. To ask for help. Right? There is no fault in recognizing that maybe when you were raised or I was raised, there was something that we didn't get. Right? That's not the shame. The shame is to wallow in that and not strive to do better. So that is to get a teacher or to get a mentor oneself as a grown man. Right? And this is where the role of the Murabbi comes in. Right? So like for instance, my previous Murabbi, Rahmatullahi alayhi, he passed away, one of my close teachers, and I read books with him. When he passed away, I've then, alhamdulillah, and the man is so generous at this time, but Sheikh Ali, when he's not traveling, that I sit with him one day a week. I'm 50 years old, and I don't trust myself by myself. So every sheikh has a sheikh, right? Every sheikh has a sheikh, until they become the grand sheikh or the elder, right? I'm not a sheikh by age, I'm just, called Imam. But every sheikh has a sheikh. Right, so this is one of the best steps to get. You find yourself a teacher that you can sit with, and if he doesn't have time, and you can't find a scholar, then you find someone who's salih, who's upright, who's an elder, that you see something good in their character, and you ask them, what have you been doing to get you where you're at? If you want to have a successful marriage, you don't go to the person who's been divorced 5 and 6 times but writes a book about a healthy marriage. Steve Harvey, for instance. You don't go to him, you go to the person that you've seen that's been successfully married, at least outwardly, you know what's going on at home. They've been married for a good 15, 20 years. That's what you go to for the advice. You don't go to the guy who wrote the relationship book. Or you don't go to Kevin Samuels on YouTube who talks about how to get married, but he was single when he died. He wasn't even married. That's not the person you go to. Or Andrew Tate. That's not who you go to. You go to the Salihin. You go to the Adilin. You go to the people who are upright and righteous. And you ask them to help guide you. Well, with that, I think we will conclude. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika,